Hey friends, happy Friday to you. This is Ryan Smith, pastor Common Thread Church. Hope that you're having a good day. You're ready for the weekend, ready for maybe the holiday weekend. I don't know if you're going to be able to celebrate a whole lot. Hope you do though. I'll be honest with you, I'm ready. I don't know what that means. We're not going to go anywhere. We've got some stuff to do around here, but I'm ready for just the weekend. Just kind of I'm in my t-shirt and just kind of hanging out today. I don't have a lot of notes typed up for today or any notes typed up today. I've actually got my Bible here, kind of old school here. It's kind of this is my Bible. I've had this. I got this when I graduated high school, so it went to college with me. It's been to Greece with me. It's been to let's see here, Mexico. It's been to Honduras. It's been to Canada. The stinking Canadians. Let's see here. I mean, it's been all over the place with me. So I've had this. It's gone up mountains with me. So it's kind of it's pretty ratty right now. But going old school today. Got some pages to read through. So I've got a few thoughts I want to talk about today. I don't know where this is going to end up. So we'll see. Let's see where this goes. But we're in our last beatitude. There's actually kind of two beatitudes here, but it's kind of combined into one. And it picks up in verse 10. And I just want to read it to you first, and then we'll kind of go from there. It says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And then in verse 11, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Now let's be honest. This is possibly the most absurd way to end this section, right? Usually when you write something and you put out all these things that you want to do, you're going to put, hey, it's going to be a great ending if you follow these things, right? It's like writing a book on a diet, a special diet. It says if you follow all these rules, if you cut all these things out of your life, blah, 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 then you're going to gain 20 pounds, right? Or you have like a kid's fairy tale book, and he's got the hero in it, and he's telling the story of all these things that's happening, and at the end the hero is eaten by a dragon, right? And that's it. It kind of feels that way, that this is how it's written. But again, this is one of those, the Beatitudes have always been a paradox, right? And so there's this twist that doesn't seem like it makes sense, but it does. And so first we're just kind of nerdy about this. If you look in verse 3 and then in verse 10, the first and this last Beatitude, they both end with, "For theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So back in the day, the writing technique is called inclusio. It's kind of like bookends. So you have a main thought, and then you have an ending thought, and those two thoughts are the same, and kind of books in and says, this is, inside of this is what all this makes up. And so what this is saying is, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So basically, the kingdom of heaven is about all these things. So that's kind of a nerdy side note to that. But just some thoughts to think about as we read this last one, this idea, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Blessed are those who are persecuted because you've done these past Beatitudes that we've talked about, right? Because you followed what I've said, you're going to be persecuted. And so just some thoughts to think about. The idea is that, one, don't be surprised when you're persecuted, right? I mean, nowadays, Christians and evangelicals, it's almost like our right to be surprised that things aren't going the way we want it to, or that our world is different, right? And what he's saying here is, hey, it's going to be that way. And so don't spend so much time being offended. Don't be so much time being surprised that it's not the way that God wants it to be. There's more effort to be put out there. The second thing is, I think sometimes we walk around like we're the king's kid, right? There's this idea that America is this great place, and it is God's place, and it was created under all these great God rules and all this place. And so we as Christians, we're special, and we get all these things. It's kind of like we're privileged, and we have these things that come to us because of what we are. And it's this mentality that sometimes it comes across that we're owed, right? And this last Beatitude throws that in our face and says, it's not going to be that way. The other thing is let's talk about persecution, right? We have no clue what persecution means. I don't want to be over generalized there, right? I know there's people here in America who wrestle with who struggle with, and they've been persecuted because of their faith, and I get that. But for most of us, persecution is, oh, there's this war on Christmas, right? Oh, they're not saying, on the Starbucks cups, they're not saying Merry Christmas anymore. It's only Happy Holidays. Really, that's persecution. That's what we're going to fight about. That's where we're going to make our stance. Is that, or they're not allowing prayer in school. The idea that it's been taken out, and so they're coming at us. That is persecution. Prayer has never been dictated by it being an oral communal thing, right? That prayer can happen wherever. And so, or even the idea that, churches should be tax-free, and there's a day coming when that's probably not going to be true, and so that's going to be our next war. Oh, look, there's this war going on. We're being persecuted. Really? I don't know that that's the case. Or, even this idea that any theological belief should become a law, right? And this one can get personal really fast. And I think that there is a place where law and theology might come together, but never should we struggle with the idea that just because it's not a law means that we're being persecuted for it, right? That we're called to live out our faith and to have a belief whether the government agrees with it or not. And as a matter of fact, that could hinder our theology is when it does become law. Just something to think about there for you. And the last two things I want to kind of talk about is that in becoming a Christ follower, there is a cost. It's this idea that, grace is free, and we talk about those things, and we also kind of make these comments that sometimes if you become a Christian, if you give your life to Christ, then life all of a sudden becomes easier. But I don't see anywhere in Jesus' teachings does he ever say that. As a matter of fact, he says the opposite. He says, by the way, when you follow these Beatitudes, when you follow these absurd teachings, people are going to look at you. When I ask you to be a sheep among the wolves, you are not going to be petted like you're some cute little thing. You may be devoured. You may be persecuted. There is going to be a cost, and maybe even a fleshly cost, to what it means to follow me. And so there is a cost to what it means to be a part of God's kingdom. And you can't take that away. But here's the other thing, is that there's a cost, but there's also hope, right? He says, blessed are you when you're persecuted, because yours is the kingdom of God. That we trust that whatever is happening now, no matter how hard it is or whatever it is that we feel like we're being persecuted for, that's not the way it's always going to be. That there is something hopeful beyond this life. There's something hopeful beyond this life now. There's this idea that we can have a heaven-like living now, right? Not to its fullest, but there is this way that I can live in a way that I can experience something greater than the world has to offer. And that's what we're called to do, is to live that way, that there is actually hope, even though there's persecution. Those two, again, the paradox of that statement. So, like I said, I don't have a lot here to kind of throw at you and say, here's this beautiful thing, but I want us, especially those that are listening, and most people are listening, I would say, have some type of faith. And I want you to hear this, is that there's persecution. And don't be surprised. But that persecution puts you in a club, puts you a part of a family, puts you part of a heritage that has spanned thousands of years and that will span an eternity. And so for us, as we move forward, the promise of persecution should not also mean that we should quit or that we should stop, but it should challenge us to know that we're on the right path. Because nothing good comes easy, right? We want it to, but the truth is we recognize that as a truth in all of life. And so for us to follow this absurd teaching means that we're going to be persecuted, that we're going to face these things that are hard. And instead of fighting that persecution, we keep living the way we're called to live. And we bring in that third way of living that Jesus teaches in these Beatitudes. And we change the world not by our shouting, but by our love and by our mercy and by our compassion and by our meekness, right? By our peace bringing. So, just some thoughts for you. I hope that you have a great weekend. I'll be back at you on Tuesday. I'm going to take Monday off, spend some time with family. I hope you do as well. But I want to close again that may we be people who seek the absurdity in our lives by people who live out these blessings, these beatitudes, and never flinch at the idea that we will face persecution. Have a great weekend. Grace and peace.